Hello friends, Swaraj here, and today I'm not going to talk about markets or financial concepts or stock recommendations or trading or any other thing. Today I'm going to talk about a very serious topic called leadership. Right now the world is going through healthcare crisis, and the response from the developed world and the underdeveloped world, or say developing world and the developed world, there has been a contrast between the responses, and that gives you a perfect example of how leadership has to be. Let's take example of India. Indian PM came out on 21st March itself, and he, on a very serious note, he said that people, the crisis is very huge. Is COVID-19 crisis or Chinese virus crisis, whatever you call it, it's a very serious issue, and he told the people that if the citizens are not responsible enough, this crisis could well blow up into a very huge crisis. And as the government, they themselves know, and the people of India themselves know, the healthcare system of India is, on a government level, I'm not talking on a private level, on a government level, the healthcare system of India is very very poor. Whereas if you compare it with the response from the US president, the response was of nothing to worry, the crisis is under control, there is no crisis at all, people have to not worry, the government is prepared. That was the kind of response, and not only of Donald Trump, the US president, the president of Italy, the prime minister of UK, almost all the developed world was not worried about the crisis getting blown up in their own country. They were pointing out fingers at China, and they were pointing out fingers at India, and they were predicting their universities, their scientists, they were busy preparing models and coming out with estimates and coming out with numbers for the number of patients in India and how many people will die in India, and they were not looking at their own background, on their own ground, what was happening on the ground level, how much number of patients were increasing, how many deaths were happening, what was the scale. They were not at all paying attention. So that is the difference between the crisis. Not only India, many other underdeveloped countries like Colombia, like Brazil, like Cuba, they all responded very very seriously. In fact, Colombia, where the number of patients was 1, immediately they declared a shutdown of 21 days, and there it is not at all blow up. Again, when you go to other countries like Nepal or various other countries, they responded very very seriously, and they totally locked down their country, and they told their people to follow these lockdowns very very seriously. Worst example of leadership comes, if you take only one example, comes from United States of America, and that is from the Trump administration. They have been busy in sugarcoating the whole crisis, not telling the reality to their own citizens, not locking down the country completely. Mr. Trump's response has been perfect example of a bad leadership. He has been sugarcoating the whole crisis. He has not been talking about real numbers, about real issues throughout. If you take since Feb, he has not at all been talking about what is going on, how is the government prepared. He has been just saying we are prepared, we are prepared, we are prepared. In fact, in 2018, Trump had dissolved his National Disaster Relief Fund, and he had dissolved that organization, and he had diverted funds to other budgetary allocations. And that is the way the US was never prepared for this crisis. In fact, when many other countries completely stopped the airlines coming from Europe and many other countries, US was still accepting people coming from abroad. Probably 10 days back, they had locked down the whole country, they had stopped all the flights. In fact, US is still accepting flights coming from abroad. That is the kind of response, that is the kind of leniency, that is the kind of not taking things seriously at all. That is the kind of response that the US leadership, US presidency has been showing. And the perfect example, if you have to take from India, where India has immediately the state governments were locking down in areas from as soon as March 4th. Delhi was having a partial lockdown. Mumbai was having a partial lockdown. March 21st, it was a complete lockdown on a Sunday, and then immediately on March 25th, the whole country went into a complete lockdown. So that complete lockdown has controlled the number of infections that have been going up. If many people have been saying these numbers are down because probably there has not been enough testing, but no, that is not the reality. I have spoken to people who are my friends who have come from abroad. The central government, the aviation ministry, the health ministry, and also on the local municipal level, there has been tracking on personal level. Say suppose a person comes from abroad, he has first been stamped on his hand with a sticker saying that he has entered the country on so and so date and he has to remain in quarantine until so and so date. His address is been asked, then the local municipality of his address is called. They have been given all the details of his contact, his address. When he arrives in his city, the municipality people come to his house and then they put a sticker on his door, and a municipality person is actually put on his door, on his gate or outside his building to ensure that that person is in quarantine for 14 to 15 days. And that is the level of response from day one Indian leadership has been showing. I'm not talking about only about the central government, I'm also talking about the state level governments in India. In India, it's a very heterogeneous democracy wherein there are multiple levels of opposition, and all these governments have been working in collaboration to ensure that the quarantine by people are taken seriously. No doubt there have been cases where the quarantines and lockdowns were not followed very seriously. Keeping that aside, the leadership has been seriously taking this crisis and not sugarcoating it at all, not lying at all, and testing people door to door, and going door to door and educating them and telling them to take this seriously, otherwise this might blow up into something really huge. And that is the example of a good leadership. In this world today, there are a lot of negative things going on, but you have to take out these positive things. You have to learn from this what kind of leadership should be followed. A leader should be frank, he should be on face, he should be ready to accept that there have been some mistakes. He should be able to accept that he is sometimes not prepared completely, and sometimes he should also be ready to tell people frankly that this is the problem and please do this so that you can also help me in doing this. Whereas the developed world like America, UK, Italy, Spain, most of the Germany, Switzerland, even Switzerland is slowly jumping into top 5 infected countries in the world. So these developed countries were very lazy in their response. They thought that their healthcare system is so good that no number of patients they come in they will be able to treat. But no, Italy's healthcare system is on a verge of collapse now. I saw a video from Spain wherein patients are sleeping outside of the in the veranda of the hospital, in the common walking area. People are sleeping and they are coughing and sneezing on the veranda. It looked like a scene of a government hospital in India where number of beds are not enough and the population is very huge, so sometimes these patients have to sleep outside. It was a scene where you cannot believe that such developed countries were so lazy in their responses, and now they are suffering, their citizens are suffering. When the leaders of the world, these countries, these developed countries, are so lazy in their responses, you should have expected that the underdeveloped countries like India, like Nepal, Sri Lanka, or South American countries, Colombia, Brazil, Chile, all those countries should have been in a worse condition, but no, that has not been the case. It has been exactly reverse. These underdeveloped countries, their leaders were very quick in their responses and very strong in their responses compared to the developed countries. And these two examples, developed world and underdeveloped leadership of developed world and leadership of underdeveloped world, should give you a perfect difference between good leadership by the underdeveloped world and bad leadership by the developed world. So this was my comparison on leadership. Tell me, how did you like this video? If you want something else, if you want to add more to this, if you didn't like, whatever it is, put down in the comments, and if you like it, please share it. Thank you very much.